Hello, welcome to my weekly Facebook Live event. And today I'm so delighted to host my friend Carine Camara, who is the owner of the business Carina, which is related to joyful aging. She is an acupuncturist, an amazing women's health specialist, and one of my personal favorite acupuncturists. Whenever I get a chance, I love to have acupuncture with her. And today we are talking about an event that's coming up, which is really exciting. It's a great way to start the new year, called the Joyful Aging Summit. And it is going to be live on January 20th. And Corinne is the hostess. And welcome, Corinne. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here on your platform.
I would love to hear more about your Joyful Aging Summit and what you want to share about it. Can you want to tell everybody what's going on with that?
Yeah, so this is going to be a day where we're going to be able to celebrate aging in a completely different way and talk about things that are affecting women over 40, in particular, perimenopause, menopause, what happens to our sexual health. And there's so much things that happen in our body as we get older that many of us are not educated about. So I put together doctors like you. Dr. Shiroko is going to be there, but then there's going to be a naturopath. There's going to be another gynecologist. There's going to be a nutritionist. There's also going to be a pelvic floor specialist. And there's also going to be a sex therapist. So just a lot of different professionals that can give you a different perspective on how we can age joyfully, and also medical myths, debunking medical myths and things that we need to learn, especially around hormones, because I feel like we've been misguided for so many years, which is why I'm so excited that you're going to be on it to really share with women that there are really amazing ways that we can handle our aging process, and it doesn't have to all look one way because there's so many different ways to go about it.
Yes, I think that's so true. And people are terrified of taking hormones. And there's been a lot of misinformation about hormones over the years. And even I have had to search for the answers that will make, that will make sense to help people with their hormones. So there's a lot of myths that I would love to help people understand and information about hormones. And then, of course, we both love acupuncture.
Yes.
And one of the wonderful things is that acupuncture helps with perimenopause and can, by itself, without adding other things, just help maintain your hormonal balance for years, actually. So, do you want to tell a story about one of your clients who's had acupuncture
Yeah.
and how you helped her not have to take hormones or take drugs or anything?
Well, just to preface it, when we say acupuncture helps with hormones, it's with consistent treatment because
Yeah.
it's a practice that builds upon itself. So one of my clients, she was coming in for facial acupuncture. Actually, I was helping her with her like rejuvenating her face, fine lines and wrinkles, and she was having hot flashes. And within a month, the hot flashes were gone. And pretty much her emotional stability has been maintained, because a lot of women suffer from anxiety and depression, insomnia. Their emotions kind of go all over the place. And we were able to mellow that out, where now she opened up a new business and she's totally balanced, and she comes in once a month and she doesn't go on, she's not on any hormones. And I've had other clients where their hormonal situation was so extreme that we do acupuncture weekly, but she still decided to go on some pellets, which I know you're kind of not a big, huge fan of, which I really want to know why. But she's on pellets and the patch. She's on a lot of different hormones. And so we've been working with that. So, it's both. I think it's women that want to go on
Mhm.
hormones that I work with, and women that don't. And some women don't feel like they need to. So it really just depends on the woman and what she's going through and her hormonal balance to begin with. Because the woman I mentioned that's on hormones, she went on IVF for 9 cycles, and so she had a very distinct hormonal past. So
Yeah. Well, and some women actually require much higher doses of hormones based on whatever it is they used to do when they were younger or what their body is used to at various ages.
Yeah.
I would be happy to answer your pellet question.
Yeah, because
So,
I went to a summit and they were like, pellets are the best thing ever. And I was like, okay, it's kind of surgical, but I want to know what are your thoughts on it?
well, first of all, it's much more expensive. Second of all, it is an invasive procedure and it has to be done every 3 months. Third, it's a dose that is metered through your body. So if you're and it's a little tiny pellet of hormones that are compounded personally for you. So it is an individual thing, but it's also, if you have estrogen and testosterone, they're two different pellets, so they have to be inserted second, both of them, and it pumps out a certain amount. And if that's the way your body processes things doesn't work properly, then you could have different dosings that are being received by your body and you can't change it.
Mm,
Whereas if you use some other method, you can change the method or you can change the dosing as you go. So, like creams are the easiest because creams you can take a little bit or a lot depending on what time of the month that you're in or how you're feeling. And so that's the easiest to experiment with. But then, there are certain hormones that you can only take orally, or you should take orally. Like progesterone is best taken orally, especially if you have sleep problems or if you're depressed, because progesterone also acts as a neurotransmitter. And so there's so much information and so many ways to do things, as we've said. And there are women who think it's the best because then they don't have to do something every single day. But my problem with it is that if you had side effects, you're stuck for 3 to 4 months and you can't change that. So, and uh, yeah, there's a lot of intervention, because it's a procedure that you have to keep having. So,
yeah, that's the part that turns me off, like the surgery part. Well, it's a minor one, but you still have
still,
to get
yeah,
cut open and
yeah, yeah. And it's put in your arm, so it's not major. And then the pellets are tiny. But still, in general, I have been averse to things like that are invasive, if possible. Although I do acupuncture too, so that's kind of invasive.
I know people say that, and I don't feel like it's the same thing, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely something being done to you, and it's not definitely not for everyone, but I feel like it's such a magical medicine that it I feel like you can treat almost anything with acupuncture unless you need surgery. But then
Yeah.
it can help pre and post surgery, as
And you can prevent surgery when so many women who have had perimenopausal bleeding or perimenopausal problems that might lead them to have a hysterectomy have not had to have hysterectomies because of acupuncture. So
yeah,
both of
and
us, I'm sure, have had those experiences. Yeah.
yeah, preventing hysterectomies, which I'm always feeling so blessed that I could help women prevent that, especially when the doctor's like, "Oh, take it out." And you're like, "Wait." And then a few months later, they don't need to. That's been great.
Great.
Yeah.
So, any other highlights of your joyful aging event that you want to talk about? Like, particular subjects of conversation, because we know we're going to talk about hormones.
Well, I'm excited about learning about this female Viagra. Like,
Oh,
Dr. Shuba is a gynecologist here in Lafayette, and she specializes in women's health. And so she went to this conference where they were talking about female Viagra. So
oh wow!
I
I'm curious
know.
to learn about that too.
I know. I was just like, there's a female Viagra.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be interesting because I feel like a lot of women that are going through perimenopause and menopause, a lot of the complaints for some women are their sexual health, like suffering from vaginal dryness, low libido, just low energy and not having vitality. And for so many people, sexuality is part of their vitality, even if they're sexually active or not. Just the ability to want to have sex if you choose to do that. And a
Mhm.
lot of my clients that are in their 50s and 60s, now they're empty nesters, they're like, hey, I want to have sex, but I have no energy. around it. So it's going
Yeah.
to be interesting to talk about the psychological aspects of it with Dr. Sandy Peace, and then talking about the pelvic floor, which is a huge part of women as we get older. The pelvic floor needs attention, not just Kegels. There's a lot of other aspects that can be discussed, prolapse, and just the overall importance of pelvic health. And then also having a doctor there to talk about that aspect. And of course, acupuncture is a really wonderful way to also treat sexual health and pelvic health. So it'll be a nice holistic view on how we could take care of our body, talking about the pelvic health and just overall the emotionality
Mm.
around sexual health as we get older.
Yeah. And so that's also another element that I see a lot in my practice is women who've had children and some women who didn't have children
Yeah.
who start to have bladder leakage and
Mhm.
bladder prolapse. So it's not just uterine,
Yeah.
it's also bladder issues
Mhm.
and how hormones can help that, but also how acupuncture can help that.
Mhm.
And so, like, maybe even more women who've been saved from having bladder lift surgeries by having acupuncture and using some hormone replacement to help support the pelvic floor. So that's wonderful that you're going to have a pelvic floor specialist too. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pelvic floor is one of those areas that holds a lot of shame for women where they don't talk about it. You know, I talk to
Mhm.
so many women that are in their 70s and they're like, "Oh, I've had this for the last 15 years." I'm like, "15 years? Like that's wild." Because it's just like they just don't talk about it. They don't talk about even rectal prolapse, but bladder prolapse seems to be more common. I even had a few clients that had vaginal prolapse and they were pretty young. They were in their 40s.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of miscommunication around that area, and there's a lot of just shame, and we're just not going to talk about it. Um, and I think it's important to bring all those aspects to light, just so
Yeah.
people can know, or even have the mindset. Oh, I can go to a pelvic floor specialist. I can go to a PT. There's options. So even if it may not be happening in your current life, in this current season, if it does happen, you're like, oh, I know I can talk to certain people, because I
Yeah.
think that's also a big part of it, like knowing that this could happen, and if it does happen, there are resources that could help you, as opposed to being like, oh, my grandmother had this or my mom had this, so I'm just going to deal with sneezing and peeing a little bit. You don't have to. Like, there are options.
Yeah. I remember my Armenian grandmother. Uh, she was quite a wild woman, and she traveled all over the world as an older woman. And she told me at some point, and I didn't get to know her very well because my parents divorced young, but she came to visit one time, and she told me she never wore underwear for years, and she would not pee in a public place. So she'd hold her urine for hours and hours and hours. And she told me, as you know, I think she was in her 70s at this point, and she said that she could no longer do that
Oh, wow.
because of the and she warned me. She said, don't hold your urine, just go when you have to go, because if you hold it too long, or that was her theory about it,
Yeah.
then you become old and you might be leaky.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's have a few details about this event. It's live and in person on Saturday, January 20th in Lafayette.
Yeah, Lafayette, California. It's gonna be.
Lafayette, California. Is there going to be any access online or any recording of it, or
No, not this time.
not this time? Okay.
Yeah,
So if you want to come, you have to come in
in
person,
person.
and it's from 1 to 5 p.m. on Saturday, uh, January 20th. And we'll be very excited to have you there if you want to come. And down here is a link, and I've also posted it in the comments so you can join. You can buy a ticket to come to the event live. And then also, if you want to learn more about Carine and her wonderful work, here is her Instagram handles. She has two, Carina.co or Carine J. Camara. And she posts useful, helpful information all the time. And you could sign up for her newsletters. I love her newsletters. They're always interesting,
Yeah,
wonderful
thank you.
information.
And if you go on my website, I have a free download on how to erase your lovin's. So if you are trying to get rid of these frown lines, there's a ebook on my website that you can sign up for free.
Cool. And if you live in the East Bay, I encourage you to go visit Carine for acupuncture. She is one of the best I've ever met.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much.